Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Wealth Wednesday. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Kathleen Walls, and I am joined here with financial therapist Brian Brogan. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent, Dr. Kathy. How are you?
I am doing well. I've been hopping and popping from one meeting to the next, but I have been waiting for this because financial planning is something that is so important to so many. And I figured, hey, it's May 1st, and what a great way to start out this May season.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's a natural progression of what we've been talking about all along.
Yeah,
I hope that our listeners know there's a method to the madness.
that's it.
Um, and yeah, it's great. May's my favorite month, maybe because my birthday is in this month.
I got ready to say both of our birthdays are
That's
in this
great.
month, so we
That's
love
right.
May.
Yeah, we love May, and if we're anybody in the East Coast, they understand that we've just been suffering through this winter here, and
I
we're
know.
itching for spring here.
Oh my goodness, so excited. This weather is
Yeah.
good. All right, so people who are joining us for the first time, um, everybody who always joins us knows get your pen and your papers ready. All right. It is so important. As you can see, I already have stuff filled up on mine, so I got to get my empty page up and running here. So, because we're going to be taking some notes here about financial planning, understanding what it is, understanding things that we need to take into consideration.
Yeah.
It's an important part of a lot of my 20 something say adulting. Like, this
Yeah.
is what we have to do. Yeah, this is what we have to do. This
Yeah.
comes with it. So let's give them an understanding and overview. What in the world is financial planning? You talked about method to our madness. Why did we choose to talk about this today?
Yeah, I mean, personal financial planning is a very broad umbrella, and for good reason. There's a lot of information underneath that umbrella, but really, it shouldn't be scary, and I think that's really what why we're talking about this subject today to kind of demystify it, and also kind of make it so that it's a little bit more palpable for people to engage or ask questions. I
Mm-hmm.
know there's a lot of people that just don't know where to look for a financial advisor or
Yep.
what's entailed and and what's part of the process of financial planning.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like to say it's a real, authentic conversation with a
Yeah.
trusted professional about your goals and about your current situation, and whether realistically or not, you have the means to get to that future goal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Mm-hmm.
and and so the whole purpose of financial planning is to optimize. So if we can't achieve the goal, that we come darn close to it. Um, and if we can't achieve a goal, that doesn't mean that we throw up our hands and we give up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we optimize it, and optimizing it means getting very close. With what you have, and so this may include compromising or rearranging priorities
Mm-hmm.
based on your values, based on time, your risk profile, the available capital and money that you have, and also visibility.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have visibility of what they're doing currently, what they're going to be doing, where they're going to be living, how their health is. A lot of people have visibility. Some people don't have visibility,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and even companies suffer from this. During the pandemic, companies actually brought in their visibility. They didn't even talk about future earnings. They couldn't give estimates.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, as individuals and our families and our individual lives and financial planning, that's also part of it.
Yeah.
Understanding your visibility. Do you have a job that you've been working at for 30 years? Well, you'll probably there's a good reason that you'll probably work there another 10 or 15 years. So
Mm-hmm.
past is not prologue, but sometimes it does rhyme.
Yeah.
And so, this is all taken into account when we look at qualitative and quantitative aspects of an individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, that's all part of the process of financial planning.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that. And there's a couple things. Number one, just to break it down, a lot of times people are scared of numbers,
Yes.
right? And so, one of the things that I encourage all my clients to do is we have to just understand that it's just a number, whether it's the amount of money that you owe, the amount of money that you make, the amount of money that you want. They're just numbers. And we have to get comfortable with those numbers because, to your point, right, we have to work within the realistic piece of what we have. This is
Yeah.
what we have right now, and we have to plan according to what we have right now so
Hmm.
that therefore we can then, if we want to scale up, most people want to scale up, not down. So if we want to scale
Well,
up,
yeah.
right, we know one, what the gap is,
Yeah.
where we currently are to where we want to go. And we may need to do incremental scaling up. Like a lot of times
Hmm.
people say, oh, well, I want to be a million. If I were a millionaire, everything would be fine. But technically, if you become a millionaire and you go buy a pack of gum, you're no longer a millionaire,
Right.
right?
That's right.
So, and it's not you become a millionaire one time. You have to also know how to plan to sustain that money and to grow that money, how to manage it. So,
Yeah.
financial planning is important, and it is something that is important at all ages.
That's right.
So this is a show that you have some young people. It doesn't matter how old they are. I remember talking with a fourth grader that was talking to me about passive income and how his father had him watching videos. I wish I could remember who the person was, but was watching videos and how he was planning about this. And another one of his classmates was listening and he was like, "What are you talking about?" And this fourth grader explained what passive income was, what his ideas were. And I just watched it, and him and this young man who became friends. And it was like, who knows what they're going to become as far as entrepreneurs and so
Hmm.
forth. So, financial planning is something that needs to happen throughout the household, throughout the generations, and as your income changes over
Hmm.
your lifespan.
Yeah. I just came from a Social Security breakfast this morning with some
Hmm.
accountants in Delaware County. And so that's a great place to start, right?
Yeah.
Because one thing that we do not want is for people just to be relying on Social Security,
Come on.
right, in their retirement.
Hmm.
Because I believe it's 1 out of 3 people that are retiring today will live till 90 years of age,
Mm.
right? So
Hmm.
your point to passive versus active income and all of that, you know,
Hmm.
we want to make sure that we plan not to outlive our money. That's the first goal,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um, and so we want to have, and so that's really the first start or first place to start is really to log into the ssa.gov and create a My Social Security account.
Hmm.
Okay, and you can remember we used to get those things in the mail that would show you your calculation of what you would get
Yes.
based on the years you worked. Well, they don't send those out in the mail anymore. A lot of people may have missed them.
Hmm.
You had to set up your Social Security account with ssa.gov,
Hmm.
with the Social Security Administration. So that's really the first step. And we talked about the knock box last week, I think.
Yep. Yep.
I received my knock box, and I've transcribed all of my documents from my old file system into that, and that's
Hmm.
great. And one of the slots, one of the folders in there is for your Social Security.
Yep.
Um, and so this is good because the question is, when should you think about taking Social Security? When do you defer it? And what is
Hmm.
the benefits of that? If you
Yep.
defer it from 62 years of age to going to 70, that you're actually deferring it, which means you say, okay, government, hold that money until I'm 70. That will actually increase. That payment will increase 8% a year.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there is a benefit for people who can do that. And that's what financial planning is so powerful, that we can figure out what other supplementary income are you going to have in retirement as a
Hmm.
long-term goal. Now, I'm just using retirement as a long-term goal. Of
Yes.
course, we'll talk about intermediate goals and short-term goals as we talk about it today.
We have somebody on here, Brian, real quick. They said they've been meaning to reach out to you at your firm, but they've been dealing with a lot. Just real quick, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Sure. They can reach me at Brian Brogan at exemplar-wealth.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
and they can also reach out to you, and you know how to get to me.
Yeah.
But exemplarcompanies.com is the RIA that I work for.
Okay.
So it's interesting. When we talk about sitting down and talking, that conversation, that authentic with a trusted advisor, and I think that's the key when you're looking to a financial advisor.
Yes.
Get to know about their background, get to know about their experience, get to know why they became a financial advisor.
Yes.
These are all really great because these questions that you're asking them, they're going to be asking about you.
That's right.
Right. So that qualitative elements is really in what we call internal data is really important, right? Which you need to obtain through, interviewing and conversations. Okay.
Yeah.
So qualitative elements are your goals, your values, your risk tolerance, your psychology. So be prepared to talk about these things. And you and I have talked about the psychology of money and kind of your money story and your money personality. That all goes inside of qualitative profiling. Okay.
Yes.
And then the quantitative elements, people always ask, what do I bring for my first meeting? That's a really open-ended question, but it's really talking about your current income, expected future income, who's in your family, what are their ages, what's the value of your assets and your debts. And really, you should be looking for a financial advisor that, and I'll steal a line from Dave Ramsey, which he called it a teacher's heart. Right? You have a teacher's heart. I have a teacher's heart, even though that's not our full-time profession. And I think that's really, really important to have somebody that's going to not, because there's a lot of jargon as we talk about, right? There's a lot of jargon, a lot of nomenclature, and the industry does that to almost kind of make people feel inadequate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I sure felt inadequate when I first started learning these terms and learning about the jargon of the financial world. So I think that's important when you have a financial advisor. So to explain these things and for you to ask silly questions. There's the old adage, there's no dumb questions, right?
That's right. And let me say this while you're saying it, you talk about having a financial advisor with a teacher's heart, and this is very important. Um, I ask my financial advisor to repeat things all the time. I take notes every time we have a meeting, and the information might be right there in the note, but it hasn't clicked yet because these are new terms and understandings for me. And as my life changes, my need to understand these things change.
That's
All
right. You're a
right.
different
And
person. That's right.
exactly. And so our brain is continuing to develop the connections that we can make continues to change. And depending on the emotional state, what is happening in your life determines what you're able to integrate and apply at a time. So you have, let me say it again. You are building a relationship with your financial advisor.
That's
So
right.
it's not a one and done type thing. So
Yeah.
you choose wisely, as Brian's saying, you choose wisely, you choose what you need. Having someone who you can trust is critical.
Yeah.
Having someone with a teacher's heart is critical. Having someone who's going to be patient, recognizing when you're hitting a certain space that's making you uncomfortable. All of these things are very important as you're sharing your assets, your financial assets,
That's
because
right.
one of the things I've worked with mine my entire life. This was someone who was a financial advisor for my parents. There are times where I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed.
Yeah.
I felt like I should know what this means and I don't. I should have more money than I do. Maybe my spending's not as great. So you want someone who you're not going to feel judged by. I
Yeah.
think is very important. Go ahead, Brian.
I love what you said there about judgment, because I've often said this term, which you may not hear in too many circles, but I've developed a term called compassionate confrontation,
That's a
right?
good one.
And I really believe, because of our background at training as therapists,
Mm-hmm.
um, is really key, because at the end of the day, you really want somebody to give you the clean, honest truth about what's
Yes.
going on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And some people, even financial advisors, they sometimes dance around the truth, and they don't want to offend their client because they feel they might lose the client. And you have to work with somebody that's a little bit bold and doesn't have that fear, okay, and has a level of confidence of what they're bringing to you. So I do want to mention that, which is important, and it's also in the context of being a fiduciary. And I'll just say this one time before we explain what are the steps of financial planning. Fiduciary, as I've said before, is somebody who puts your interest before their own, right? So the financial advisor is doing a deep dive about all of your financial life and your personality and your hiccups and things that have gotten you in trouble, or maybe there's a heuristic that comes down through generational, learning, which you've learned something that's irrational, right? That generational curse we talked about. So you need somebody to ask these questions in a way that's respectful and trustworthy, but also somebody's going to, maybe in the discovery, maybe poke a little bit, but do it in a way that is respectful and to elicit that information.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, you talked about assets, liabilities. So first, let's just give a definition of what an asset is.
Sure.
Because we have various ages that are watching this program, and what a liability is, and some examples. I'll get into that real quick, and I'll circle back. But when we talk about assets, that's all part of the financial planning, is to understand what are assets, what are liabilities. So assets is something that's going to add to the value of your net worth. Okay. And a liability is going to be something that's going to take away. So an expense, of course, and so that's actually the first step in financial planning, is to do a cash flow analysis. And for those who have been listening, we've actually have stair-stepped this program. And the first thing we recommended is getting a software, which we call a spending, analysis, which is also called a budget. We just don't like the word budget. And having a spending plan using a software that's going to give you that feedback mechanism. Okay, on your liabilities. Right. Your liabilities are things that are the sucking sound in your checking account every month. And if you have kids, it's even a greater sucking sound, right? So it's like the Hoover vacuum. You're just sucking up all the money. So it's really important when it comes to what goes into your checking account, the monies that are going out. And then cash flow analysis is understanding what do you keep at the end of the month after everything comes in and goes out, what's left over. Okay. And then we start to learn words that you're talking about. It's all about exposure of this vernacular and this jargon. So people might hear the word for the first time about discretionary versus non-discretionary. And I just love those words. Okay? I know.
And I want people to love the word discretionary and non-discretionary, right? It's just especially discretionary. So what are the expenses that are tied to needs or must pay, like utilities, insurance, food, rent, etc.? These are all non-discretionary. Why? Because like the word implies, you don't have the discretion or the power to decide about this bill. When the bill comes in for the utility, that's the number. I don't see it. That's right. Unless the meter's off, I don't think people are too successful in negotiating that rate.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
In general terms, I'm speaking. And so we're reminded at this point of one of the rules that we have, which is, where does money go? And Dr. Kathy, where does money go?
Money goes where it is treated the best.
That's right. So we now look at a cash flow analysis, which is the first step of financial planning. We do this over 90 days, and then we keep going over and we find our behavior, our spending behavior. We're finding that we're spending too much at maybe a coffee shop, or we didn't know we spent a couple $100 on several different blouses this month. And we forgot to return a couple. So, that return game kind of maybe snags us. So it's really understanding, where is the money going and how are we treating it the best? Okay. And what are the expenses that are tied to wants that you cannot live without, right? So understanding discretion means at the end of the month, the money left over after all the non-discretionary bills are paid. What do you want to do? What in your power? What are you going to do with that money? How are you going to treat that money with respect and get a greater earning in it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's three buckets, as you know. There's past spending, which is what we call debt,
Right.
right? So you may have to address that with the extra money, pay down debt.
Mm-hmm.
We have current savings, which is really between today and 12, 18 months out. Can we have visibility? Like my son's going to college. Okay, so I had to start moving money from the 529 account into more safer things because I don't have the long term to invest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's really kind of an intermediate or what's happening today to 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then a longer term, 2, 3, 5 years out. What are my future savings, which is really can be in a sense for a second home or a car or charitable giving or for retirement, okay, for education, as we just talked about. So understanding these terms about discretionary, non-discretionary, and then moving into understanding credit and debit and debts and understanding banking. That's the key part of cash flow analysis. Well, Brian, what's the difference between ACH and electronic funds transfer? Okay, that's a conversation. That's a full conversation. One's a little bit more risky than the other. They're both pretty good in transferring money out of your bank, but knowing the differences. What's the difference between using a credit card and a debit card?
Yep.
Can you use your debit card as a credit card? Right? So these are all things you should be having conversations with your financial advisor to educate you on the fundamentals of 101 when it comes to banking.
Yes.
What is an APR? What is amortization? What's a balloon payment? What is a variable versus a fixed loan? Okay. What is a floating rate?
Right out my mouth.
Yeah. Yes. What is a floating rate note? What is a money market? What is a credit union? What's a credit union? How's that different from a traditional money center bank? These are all great questions you should have. And I think what we'll do, we'll post them on your website. So some common questions to ask your financial advisor so that you can get them engaged in that education. So that's cash flow analysis, right? The second part is risk management. And that's the type of risk that you can absorb or the type of risk that you cannot absorb, right? I had a friend call me up a couple of years ago and they were like, I just got this quote for this incredible bill for insurance. And I said, well, do you have that amount of money to cover that loss in the bank? And he said, well, yeah, I do. I said, well, then you're self-insured. You don't need insurance. Right. And so that he never thought of that. He said, oh, I thought I had to get the insurance. Well, if it's not mandated by law, what you're really doing is you're saying, I will absorb the loss. Okay. If this happens. And then we do an analysis of what's the percentage or probability of that risk actually happening.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one part of talking about risk, whether you absorb it or whether you spread it out and share that risk with other people. And so life insurance, home insurance, car insurance, that's when you spread out that risk with other people.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. What a great way to look at insurance. That really, it's a mindset change. And I know we've talked about this when it comes to money, when it comes to a wealth mindset. It is shifting some of the ways in which we see things, understand things. And that's definitely one that shifts. Yeah, JJ Hannah said nice and gave you the thumbs up on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so do you see what we just did here? In the 2 steps, we haven't even talked about investments, right? We talked about what is money coming in and coming out, discretionary and it's non-discretionary. How do you lower your debt and start saving for intermediate short-term goals?
Yes.
And then right away, we address the risk.
Yes.
Where's your exposure, right? And that's the same thing any good leader would do to their corporation, to the family, to the football team. Where's the risk?
Yep.
Okay. Where's our blind side and how do we cover for it? Okay.
Great question.
And so that moves us into what needs to be protected. What do we value?
Yeah.
Right? What do we value? Okay. It could be a physical thing, a material thing. It could be a spiritual thing. And we'll talk about that in a second. But we value our lives because there's life insurance. We value the protection of our car. There's car insurance, our home, right? And then did you know you can have insurance on investments?
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's what they call an annuity.
Oh,
Yeah. So really, an annuity is insurance on a mutual fund investment.
interesting.
Just,
Okay.
just another way of looking at it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
annuity is an insurance on your investments.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's why annuities have gotten a bad rap traditionally, because they are more expensive than your traditional investment vehicles.
Gotcha.
But you're paying for the insurance. Yeah.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah. So it's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, understanding that risk part too, and we'll get that into a state, but you want to be able to transfer the value and protect the risk of losing that value.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. So those are the first two steps: cash flow analysis and risk management.
Okay.
The third step is understanding and going into the investment world, investing, putting
Mm-hmm.
that money to work, right? And so understanding that an asset is something that pays you,
Yes.
okay? And it could pay you in an active fashion or a passive fashion. A
Mm-hmm.
passive fashion would be something like you would own either a stock that paid a dividend, or you own a real estate property that pays a rent to you.
Mm-hmm.
These would be passive things. You're
Mm-hmm.
not actively working to achieve that dividend or coupon interest rate.
Right. Right.
So the first thing we learn about in investing is liquidity. Again, a very kind of a interesting word,
Mm-hmm.
but liquidity is the first word you should learn about in financial planning. And the liquidity means availability of cash,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it also means, can something, a car, a tent, anything around your house, a piece of artwork, can it be converted to cash?
Mm-hmm.
So if it can be converted into cash within 90 days, maybe even 120 days,
Mm-hmm.
then you would say the liquidity, it's pretty liquid,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Within that time frame, if it can be converted to cash.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people like the stock market, because they can buy and sell the stock real quick and make it into
Yes.
cash.
Yes.
Right. But so that's one thing when you're talking about investing, you want to find about, well, if I go into real estate, what's the liquidity of real estate,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Kathy, if I were to ask you, what's more liquid, real estate or the stock market?
I'm gonna say the
More
stock
liquid.
market.
Yeah,
I
that's exactly right. Yeah.
yeah.
And so that's why those companies have a higher premium multiple, they call that they're
Mm-hmm.
getting, because they can access capital in the markets very easily,
Yeah.
because they're publicly traded companies.
Mm-hmm.
Have availability to liquidity, and the investors, the shareholders that buy into that, have availability into liquidity.
Yeah. And I mean, nowadays, we look at digital money platforms like Cash App, where you can buy stocks and
Mhm.
Bitcoin and everything else in real time. You can do your day trading up to a certain point.
Sure, you can light
Um,
your hair on fire.
yes, right.
You
You
can
can,
you can do all that and not know the word liquidity.
and not, you better believe it, because it's literally a push of a button.
That's right.
And then
That's
it's
right.
just like, okay, so right. So we do have access to liquid, right? To liquefy some of our money versus, as you're mentioning, real estate, because a lot of people do purchase different real estate. You can't sell it at a push of a button as quickly
That's right.
as you can. It's not going to pop up in my Cash App the same way. Go
And
ahead.
I think there's probably, we always see the glorified stories on TV of flip this house,
Yes.
right? Well, I'm here to tell you, we don't hear about all the stories of, I couldn't flip that house.
And I could tell you a whole story, but that's not what we're on here for today. Yes.
Right? But the ones that really do well in that type of environment are ones that are working off a spreadsheet. They
Yep.
know the time, the loan that they have, the cost of that capital. They have it down to the hour, if not the day,
Yes.
right? And they know they had to, they have a big crew that can come in and do all that work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
they have all those variables accounted for.
Yes.
But real estate as an asset is illiquid,
Mm-hmm.
right? It
Mm-hmm.
takes a long time to convert real estate, which
Yes.
makes it should make it a little bit safer investment. So
Yes.
is there a correlation between liquidity and safety? Sometimes there is, but it's not a
Mm.
hard rule.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go
Um,
ahead. So what comes after liquidity?
so understanding your time horizons. right?
Mhm.
So as we talked about, saving in the past is debt, and saving for the current or intermediate expenses is short-term savings.
Mhm.
Um, but understanding when do you need that money goes hand in hand with
Yes.
liquidity, as you can
Yes.
see, right? So this is where those buckets come into account. So it's not putting all your eggs in one basket, but having
Yes.
several different buckets,
Yeah.
right? I don't get paid by the Bank of Capital One, but that's the old ING bank, where they have these great saving buckets and they have a high interest rate. I think they're at 3 or 4%.
Mhm.
So you can have short-term buckets for your normal day expenses, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's another way of understanding your time horizons, right?
Okay. Yes.
So if you, in the next 12 months, are you going to have a car bill for
Mhm.
maintenance?
Mhm.
Probably. Okay. Well, maybe that's a small little short-term savings bucket that you should start putting money into,
Mhm.
because we all get hit with a flat tire, an alternator,
Something.
battery, and they're always going to run. Now with the prices going up, they're going to
Yep.
run 250,
Yep.
300, $400 every pop,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I saw a great article just recently about how people now, because the expenses of leasing and financing and the price of new cars, they're repairing their cars at a greater rate now,
Mm. Wow.
right? So if
Wow.
that's the case, which I'm all for, that's what I do. I buy my
Mhm.
cars and hold them for over 10 years
Yes.
plus, and I rebuild them basically by the end
Yes.
of the day,
Yes.
right? And that's still cheaper than
Mhm.
going out and getting a new car, right?
Yeah.
And I have a short-term bucket for that. So I know my time horizon in 12 months. I know that I'm going to be spending on average $220 per car per month in maintenance.
Yeah. Brian, what I love about this, as we're talking about financial planning, a lot of times when people are talking, they give you kind of like a formula to
Yep.
follow, but there's all of these other proactive steps that you can take. You're really giving a holistic picture of planning because
Mm-hmm.
you're absolutely right. When you have a car, there is maintenance. There are possibilities. I literally just had to get my tire plugged recently because I ran over a nail. I mean, that's
Yep.
so common. I was
Yep.
thankful that I only had to spend $20 for a plug
That's
as
right.
opposed to $200 for a brand new
Yeah, you
tire.
got lucky. I
Yes.
always get hit in the white wall, so I had
Oh,
to get a new
goodness.
tire.
But to the point that I know it's a plug, and eventually I may have to get that tire.
Yep.
So, from a financial planning standpoint, start to build the money to put towards that.
Yep.
Now, I will say I'm currently not getting any compensation from Cash App, but notice I'm future planning for them to do so.
Okay.
But they do now have a feature where you can save for something. And
Yep.
so you can start to allocate money for whatever that particular item is that you want.
That's right.
So I like that these apps are encouraging the financial planning. They're
Mm-hmm.
encouraging the future thinking, not just the immediate gratification.
And again, we talk about this. That's exactly right, Dr. Kathy. We talk about that having the relationship with your future self,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So put yourself in a situation where you have two blown out tires.
Right.
What's the frustration level you're going to have? You're sitting on I-95 with two blown out tires
That's right.
because they haven't fixed the potholes.
That's right.
Okay? So if that's the case, then in order to lower the stress, which is future care of yourself,
Come
you're going
on.
to put money into a savings account. And it could
That's
be
right.
just as simple as $25 a month or
Yep.
$50 a month.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Um,
I had a
and
friend that he told me that years ago when I first started my business, and he said, create an account. He had me create a couple different accounts
that's
where
right.
money just automatically came out and
Yeah.
went to those accounts. So I had a fun account. He said, I need you to create a fun account. He said, you're only allowed to touch that account for the fun things that you do.
That's a
And
real discretionary account.
yes, and you're exactly. It was like $25, between 25 and $75 a month. Because sometimes 75 couldn't come out.
Yeah.
So it went into that account, and I left it alone. And then I had retirement. Again, this was when I was first starting my business, right? And then there was money that would come out towards retirement.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay. And he was like, and I need you to basically set it and forget it.
That's right.
Just let it go.
That
And
was
that's
great
what I
advice.
did.
Great
Yeah, it
advice.
really was. It really was. And
Well,
it
I
was
mean,
amazing. It built up over time.
yeah, David Bach's book, Automatic Millionaire, Three Principles: pay yourself first, make it automatic, and buy a home. Okay,
Yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
20 years ago that book came out.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
If people just follow that advice, and paying yourself first is the, as you know, being an
That's
entrepreneur,
hard.
that's the hard. It's the
It
first
is
principle you have to learn.
hard.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is great, and understanding those buckets. And here's a great thing that if you, this is a great litmus test to knowing whether or not this saving and financial planning is working on you. The more you do this, the longer, and over time, what will happen is that the thrill that you get from spending on shopping for clothes or whatever you do, the thrill that you have doing that should be replaced by the thrill of watching your money grow.
Yes.
When you have more thrill from watching your money grow, putting that into account, that it equal or greater than the thrill of purchasing,
Come on.
you have made it to the promised
Yes.
land.
Yes. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
So that's a good litmus test. If you're still getting, a dopamine hit every time you're buying, pushing the button, as we call it in
Yes.
our house.
Yes.
Did you push the button again?
Right.
Yeah, kind of, with Amazon and packages. So as soon as you substitute that,
Yeah.
and you're doing this, you will have this future relationship with yourself. That's when you know you're winning in this game,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely.
So
All right. What else you have
yeah.
for them? Go ahead.
So then you start understanding what is a stock, what is a bond, what is cash, what is commodities, what is cash equivalents, so we just talked about, and what is the risk profiles of different investment vehicles.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So stock, as I teach my students at St. Joe's University, every class, I don't care if it's a finance class or not, you're going to learn what a stock is. You're going to learn what a bond is. You're going to learn that. Okay. A stock equals equity. Equity equals ownership. Ownership equals voting rights. Voting rights is power. Having stock is, at the end of the day, having power. Okay. It's ownership. So they're synonymous. They all work together. Okay. And then what is a bond? A bond is an IOU payment. Okay. It's when you give your money over to somebody and you collect a coupon or an interest rate in a systematic schedule. It could be a monthly, quarterly, annually, biannual schedule. Okay. So the stock, a lot of people are like, well, I don't have money to invest in stocks. Okay. Well, what I did was I bought a couple of business books when I was in my 20s and became an expert on certain specific aspects of business, whether it's marketing or branding or QuickBooks was really what I specialized in. And then I went to small companies and I consulted for a fee or sweat equity for ownership of their company.
Right.
Right. So you can transfer your knowledge into stock.
Yeah.
By sweat equity, right? So that's one of the greatest things I tell my students is that when you're young and have energy, you should be using sweat equity.
Yes.
Okay, that's the greatest way to build wealth and build stock, and then and that works out. So stocks, when they pay out a coupon, it's not called a coupon; it's called a dividend. So there's different tax implications. So understanding a stock is ownership, it's equity. Understanding sweat equity, understanding a bond, okay? And most people, we're relearning about what a CD is.
Yes.
Right? So if you remember back in the 80s with our grandparents, specifically my grandmother, Grandma Bohan, she came over from Ireland, and she loved her CDs. She would put a couple $100 into this bank, and then go over here and put a couple $100 in this bank. And back then in the early 80s, interest rates were around 13, 14%. So that money doubled every 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now our interest rates are at 5 and a quarter, 5.5. So the rule of 72 basically says that you take 72 and you divide it by the interest rate of return, and that's how long it will take to double your money. Okay. So if you take 72 and you divide it by 10, that's 7%. So if you get a 7% return, you're going to double your money every 10 years, 10.2, something 10.4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So understanding the rule of 72, which is
Mm-hmm.
which is important. Understanding interest rates and bonds. A CD is a certificate of deposit. So that's when you loan somebody money and you get an interest rate
Right.
paid back. Okay.
Right.
And I would and this is a great time to buy CDs because they're FDIC insured. They're low risk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great way to have a short term bucket with a good interest rate.
And people who want to buy CDs go to their local bank, look online. What is your recommendation? Or
Yeah,
what are some options?
I think all the above. Your financial advisor can buy what they call brokerage CDs, so they
Mm-hmm.
might have a little bit a better rate. But
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some really good competitive banks and credit unions that have some really good rates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
which is excellent. And then commodities, understanding there's soft and hard and digital commodities. Hard commodities are gold, silver, platinum. Soft are orange juice, pork bellies, chocolate or cocoa beans, and coffee beans. Right?
Pork bellies, Brian. Really,
That's
pork bellies.
I know it. That's right. That's the Trading Places. That's our favorite movie.
That's right.
That's it. You might get this in a BLT sandwich
That's right.
kind of a situation there. And that's the best. And then digital commodities like Bitcoin or
Yeah.
Ethereum, right? So those
Yeah.
are store of value also, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
understanding how commodities are actually the first asset class that will feel inflation.
Mm.
So it's interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really good to know about commodities and understand because they're actually the raw commodity is what is the first purchase that people make in order to make something of a
Okay.
byproduct, right?
Yes.
Or finished product, if you
Yes.
will.
Wow.
So understanding, so that's just a little overview of investing and just the terminologies. Obviously, it's a lot more complex than that, and it
Yes.
takes a lot more time to go over. But just understanding the basic terms of what is a stock? Okay, that's ownership. What's
Yeah.
a bond? It's an IOU. What's a
Mm-hmm.
commodity? Well, these are things that are in the ground or used for commerce. Copper being the number one commodity, copper, silver, in industries.
Yes. Yes.
The next step would be tax planning, right? And tax planning, we just got done April 15th of hopefully everyone filed their taxes. Some people deferred to pay their
Mm-hmm.
taxes until September.
Mm-hmm.
Optimizing your money in a legal, tax efficient way,
Yes.
and working with your wealth financial advisor. You should be working hand in hand with your tax strategy
Mm-hmm.
or your CPA or your accountant. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
because taxes are going to go higher. I'm sorry to tell you, but they're
Mm-hmm.
going to go higher because there's only a couple of ways you can deal with the amount of debt we have in our nation, and
Mm-hmm.
taxes is going to be one of them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be tax efficient or tax optimization strategies and investment vehicles that people can take advantage in a very legal way.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So traditionally, that would be like an IRA, a tax deferred instrument,
Yes.
or a Roth IRA where you do it with after tax money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also things like opportunity zones, 1035 exchanges,
Mm-hmm.
and you can invest in solar, wind. These are all things
Mm-hmm.
that the government is subsidizing and giving tax credits,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and EV cars and things like that.
Yeah. How do
So,
people find out? And I mean, I'm assuming it's an accountant, but how do people find out about the various tax credits that are now available?
well, that's part again, interviewing your financial advisor. They should have somebody in their network if
Mm-hmm.
they're a true professional, and
Mm-hmm.
then interviewing your CPAs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of CPAs are really just concerned about good information in, good information out. They're not doing
Yes.
the tax strategies. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really what you want to ask. I know at Exemplar, that's one of the main things we do is tax strategies for what individuals and families and corporations, because it is a subspecialty in that
Yes.
area. So that's why the questions when you're doing discovery and interviewing for your accountant, your tax planning, and your financial planning is: do you recommend or do you have access to tax strategies and vehicles that supplement them?
And I'm so glad that you said that because a lot, and this is why I love doing my shows because I have wonderful people that come on and share basic knowledge that many times is not basic. And what I mean by basic is foundational knowledge. There are questions that we don't know to ask. How would I even know to ask about tax credits and about tax
Tax strategies.
strategies,
Yeah.
right? I wouldn't put those two words together
Yeah.
if it wasn't for my relationship with you and you
Yeah.
saying that to me. Or I have a fantastic accountant who she did. She looked at some things that were going on within my businesses and she's like, why is your business structured this way? It should be structured like this. It's more beneficial for you. So I didn't know. I started this business 19 years ago. I just went with what it was at the time and I kept moving with it. And I was so busy working on my professional development to perform the best that I could, but I wasn't looking at my business professional development so that it could perform the
That's right.
best that it could.
It's, and that's great advice you received, because what she's doing is she's analyzing your current situation, your current course of action,
Mm-hmm.
and then giving you some alternative course of actions,
That's
right?
right.
And that's exactly to the T of a good professional.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about a lot of people, we have different programs where you're able to do your taxes on your own. But are you aware of the tax credits that
Yeah,
you are due? Are you aware of the tax
I love that.
strategies?
That's exactly right,
Go
Dr.
ahead.
Kathy. You're nailing it. I always say, if somebody says you should get a smart loan, you should run for the hills,
Mm,
right? Anytime you
mhm,
hear the word smart, it means just the opposite. Okay. So a lot of times they want to make it easy for us as consumers or
mhm,
investors by pushing the button that's so easy for liquidity. But I'm
mhm,
here to tell you that's almost a trap, right?
mm.
Just to your point, if we get kind of conditioned as consumers to do just the, software, tax software, and just plug in the things, we may not be getting the most current strategies of how to take
Right.
optimization schedules of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's a really great point.
It,
And
it,
so, yeah, and so that's why we're talking about the jargon, because in
yes.
our world they say minimize the jargon. I'm like, no, educate about the jargon. Don't
Yes.
minimize. Educate.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit of a contrarian when it comes to that. Most financial planners, they're taught to minimize jargon. I said, listen, the jargon's there. We need to learn the jargon.
That's right. And teach it. And again, this goes back to the top of the hour when you talked about both of us having a teacher's heart, right? We
That's right.
want to inform people, we want to educate people. So find out about what these tax strategies are. People, reach out to your accountants, ask them, reach out to your financial advisors and planners, ask them to direct you accordingly. If
Yeah.
they don't know, you have Brian here. This is a tremendous resource where you can reach out to him. Go ahead, Brian.
And these things are cyclical, right? So I was born in 1972, and it's interesting because I heard my dad, who was a financial advisor, an investment guy, say that, I raised three boys on three bear markets from 1967 to 1974.
Mm-hmm.
And so people stopped buying stocks.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a big push like there was today. So he had actually had to go and find some instruments that people would get them involved in tax strategies,
Mm-hmm.
because back then taxes were very, very high, as they
Mm-hmm.
are now. So you're starting to see a push now for these alternative investments,
Yeah.
which is key. The
Yeah.
last step that I'll talk about is estate planning,
Yes.
right? And I love the statement, or the quote that I came across a couple years ago when I'm as a financial family therapist, and the capacity you and I work in that. Um, we're always talking about legacy and about
Mm-hmm.
sustainability of the wealth and
Yeah.
leaving it for the and multi-generational wealth creation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we really need to start at the first principle of estate planning, which is understanding it's not what you leave your
Mm-hmm.
heirs. Okay. It's not what you leave to them, but what you leave in them
Mm-hmm.
that is the most sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I really do a lot of work with our clients around identifying their values, their principles, right? And understanding kind of the secret sauce of the family,
Mm-hmm.
how, if there's wealth, how the wealth was created.
Yep.
What's the story? What's the
Yep.
money story?
Yes.
what's the money personality of
Yeah.
the of wealth creators and the founders of a business.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because when we identify those core values and principles of what I call the secret sauce of the family,
Yes.
and we tease that out through a process, a discovery process and conversation and questionnaires. When we tease that out, that gives us a roadmap of estate planning,
Yep.
because it's really about what you leave in them, not what you leave to them.
Yes.
Okay. If you leave them $1 million, they can burn through that $1 million.
Honey.
If you leave in them the knowledge of the jargon, the
Yeah.
knowledge of what is a stock, a bond, a commodity, what is liquidity, what is estate planning, if you give them that financial literacy,
Mhm.
which is key, that
Mhm.
will have sustainability.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I often said that, I think if you were to put limits on a trust fund and you had a big pile of cash and you were going to disperse it after you left this earth, then I would put a clause on it that they don't get the money until they pass a certain level of financial literacy,
It's the truth.
right? So
Yep.
that's what we're talking about,
Yep.
and so when we go through the steps of financial planning, estate planning, we look at the first thing, obviously, which is, do you have a will?
Mhm.
Do you have a living directive? Do you have a
Mhm.
trust? And where are those
Mhm.
documents? And are those documents in a place that is accessible?
Mhm.
Okay. And does everybody know where that is? Okay.
Right. Right.
That's the key.
That's right.
Now, remember, I quoted Susie Orman a couple of shows ago, and she said the greatest act of love you can do for your family after you're done and gone and left is to have a will, a living directive, a trust, and for them to know where it is.
Yes.
Okay. To have these things kind of worked out before you leave.
Yes.
You want to check your beneficiaries on all your ownership documents. That's something that you should do once a year.
Baby. Yes. Yes.
uh, and so understanding, knowing the rules of gifting. Right now in 2024, you can gift up to $18,000 per person.
Mhm.
Married couples can give out $36,000 to their kids, their
Mhm.
spouses, and to their grandkids.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's a big number.
I gotta say, and
Um,
that's gone up because one point I think it was like 15,000
yeah, it
was
used to be
the.
like 12 and
Yep.
13,000. So
Yep.
now it's 18,000,
Mhm.
which is great. And this is for people that are at the end, the fourth quarter of their lives, and they
Mhm.
want to spend down their estate. I think
Yes.
that's the quickest and most simple solution to not pay taxes is to
Mhm.
gift away your estate. And I'm
Mhm.
sure people could use that money
I know that's
with
right.
the price of milk and cheese.
Let me tell you something, and it's so important. And I know sometimes people don't like to talk about this estate planning piece, and we can spend another episode talking about
That's
this
true.
and why
That'd be
it's
good.
so important.
Yeah.
And the will and the living directive and the trust. I just actually had to deal with some of this. And in the process of talking to various bankers, the amount of money many times that is left in a bank
Yeah.
because family members did not give other family members permission to access
Yeah.
that money, it's legit just sitting there.
Yeah.
And this is why these documents are so important because
Titling.
these
Titling.
family members, many of them, did not work all this and invest all of this time and energy for their family not to have access,
That's right. That's
you
right.
know.
And so,
So,
the advanced directives, durable power of attorney, and these are all part of really having those really confidential, important
yes,
conversations
yes,
around your final arrangements, your
yes,
wishes, your desires.
yes.
And, when should you do this? Early and often.
Early and as you mentioned, the
Yeah.
review, because people come in your life, out of your life, beneficiaries
Yeah.
come and go, they change, right? But if you don't update it,
Yeah.
it's going with the last case scenario
That's
that's
right.
on there. And I have been a witness to ex spouses having access to things that current spouses don't have access
That's
to
right. That's right.
because the will was never updated.
Updated. That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very important to have these conversations. And I was blessed because my mother was a therapist and we had really a lot of open communication. And
Mm-hmm.
then, unfortunately, she was killed in a car accident in
Mm-hmm.
1994. And
Mm-hmm.
I received that phone call, and your world changes instantaneously,
Instantly. Mm-hmm.
right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
unless I had those conversations with my mother about
Mm-hmm.
who, what, when, where,
That's
how,
right.
okay,
That's right.
I would have had more of a burden of stress,
Yes.
in addition to everything else that was
Right.
going. So
Right.
that's why I stick by that statement that it is the greatest act of love.
Yeah.
It really is. It's the greatest act of care
Yeah.
for the people that will be left behind
Yeah.
to pick up the pieces,
That's right.
right? And is that going to be a smooth transition, or is that going to be something that's going to be a hellish experience that they'll never forget?
Yeah.
I
And that's
choose
it.
I choose for the prior.
I choose the piece of it. And my mother is an existentialist, so she's very practical. She raised us with from the moment that you're born, you start to die.
Yeah,
Like now, as a child, people are like, "What in the world? Like, who talks to their children like that?" She's like, "What? It's a matter of fact. Like, this
yeah,
is it."
that's
And
it.
so, with that being said, when she started having health challenges, she's like, "Okay, this goes to this person, this goes here. Let me do this." And she started divvying things up, making sure wills were put in place, making sure power of attorneys were put in place. And so, one of the things that I want people to take away from today is identify who you would like as your power of attorney, have that conversation with them, and please get that in place, get that notarized, make sure that it covers health as well as financial and anything else.
Motorized,
And
witness.
note right. Witness exactly.
That's
And
right.
here's the other thing. You can get it done externally, but also get it done internally with your banks because the banks have to run those documents through a
Yeah.
legal department and the legal department doesn't always accept external documents. So you want to make sure that you are going in the bank and
Okay.
having whoever your POA is make sure that they are within the bank POA system as well as having an external POA. So,
And this comes in account with children going to college. The
yes.
children, students that are over 18 have rights now of individuality and confidentiality of their even their academic records.
Mhm.
So you,
Mhm.
as a parent, you would think, well, maybe I'm paying for college and I don't have access to your records.
Right.
So you need to understand that this is not just for end of life stage, but all throughout the
Throughout
stages.
life.
Yeah,
It's real. It's real talk.
absolutely.
And it makes you really evaluate your relationships.
Yeah.
So, all right, Brian. So, how do people get a hold of you again? Any final words that you want to make sure that they take away from today?
That's way that you can jump on LinkedIn is another way you can get me. That's probably the easiest
Mhm.
way. You can direct message me on LinkedIn, Brian
Yeah.
Brogan, exemplar, and yeah, I'm easy to find.
Yes, he is. Well, Brian, I thank you so much. For people who have joined us late, make sure you catch the replay. Come on over to YouTube Side of Life and come to Ask Dr. Walls 525. Please be sure to subscribe. I need those numbers to go up. Be sure to subscribe, hit the replay, and share this information. It was so foundationally setting as we're taking financial planning into consideration. Brian left you with 5 bucket areas that you need to take a look at. And throughout each month, we'll continue to unpack more and more of this on our Wealth Wednesday. As always, Brian, thank you so much for joining me
Thank you,
and
Dr.
providing.
Kathleen.
Oh, you're welcome. And providing this to the community. JJ Hannah says, thank you both. As always, very valuable. Just so that everyone knows, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is Sisters for Harmony, where we will be talking about it's May, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So put it up. We're going to be talking about mental health awareness and
Excellent,
the
excellent.
importance of it. So you can join us then. As always, until we meet again, God bless and continue to live your greatest life. See you all soon. Bye
Take
bye.
care.